No, I'm way off. I can scooch over if you want.
No.
Or you could just do that.
Just pre-show, you just wiggle all around and change your camera angles, and it's more work for everybody else. So
I do my pre-show dance.
All right.
Jam out.
What's up this morning?
Can we talk about GLP-1s, or is that kind of taboo on YouTube?
No, you're not going to start off the show with doing something that's going to get us kicked off the entire internet. So
I know. YouTube's going to hide it. The internet's not going to like it.
You're not an expert on GLPs. And
I am not an expert on GLP-1s.
And you like RFK, so yeah, you can't talk about GLPs.
It actually had nothing to do with RFK Jr.
Yeah, you know what? But the YouTube algorithms don't care if you make a disclaimer or say, well, it doesn't care. As soon as you say the word, right, you're just kicked off the internet.
Well, I don't know, because it is also controversial, and the internet does thrive off of controversy.
Yeah, but it's not that controversy.
Just not that one.
Yeah.
Because it's health related.
Exactly.
If it's politics related, if it's president related, they're like, oh, all day long, let's get people revved up. But they're like, stuff like that, people just aren't so angry about. Well, okay. So you gotta think, people who market and promote things like not on the up and up, they hijack those algorithms to push sales pitches. So if you made some content and you weaved in a way to sell your thing, they want to defend consumers against getting hoodwinked by someone, the snake oil salesman on the internet. So that's what you're fighting against. It doesn't know. Wait a minute. Yeah. You're saying the internet wants to avoid people getting hoodwinked by salesmen?
Yes, the algorithms do.
They could have fooled me.
Yeah, it's one of the things.
I would have guessed it was the opposite. Everybody's getting hoodwinked by salesmen.
No, most of their defenses are the spammers from overseas that figure out how the algorithms work, and they push terrible content that are just sales pitches and scams. And so they limit the exposure to those by, keywords or whatever, and disappears. Just part of it.
Everything's captured. Everything's manipulated.
Yes, for sure.
All right. What do you want to talk about?
No, just not that. Anything but that. What else you got?
So I was thinking about those this morning because I saw the Oprah interview. Mm-hmm. I wanted to talk about that, but no.
Save it to the end. You can just get last 20 minutes or so, throw out the thing that's going to get you anchored into the ocean.
All right. What do you want to talk about?
I left it up to you today.
I brought something and you said no.
That's not me talking. I'm talking.
The internet said no.
The internet says no.
How about our viewers? Our viewers that are actually live and watching and can't have this hidden from them. What do you guys want to talk about? Do you want to hear about my subject, or do you want to talk about something else?
Thank you for not saying the word again. I like it.
Yeah, my subject matter, my interest. Do we want to talk about the snow or the weather? Because I know you love doing that.
Oh, yeah.
The weather and what national day it is today.
Is there a national day today?
There is. What is today? Today, I think, is National... Is it Get to Know Your Customers Day, I think?
Okay.
For business owners.
I think banks should be closed on that one.
Yeah, get to know your customers by closing down.
Mm-hmm. You know how, like, my kid, which is in high school, and my wife, who is a teacher, when the weather says it's going to snow, like, the first thing that happens is like, I hope school gets canceled.
Oh, yeah.
School gets canceled.
Oh, my kids have developed this superstition now. They got it off the internet, I'm guessing, where they turn their pajamas inside out and backwards, and they put like a spoon under their pillow or something like that, or an ice cube in the toilet. They have all these rituals they do, and it looks like school might be canceled. And I'm not gonna lie, I thought it would be today based off of what I was hearing before today. Yeah. I was like, ooh, conditions are gonna be right. It may happen, but it did not. And they were a little disappointed.
Yep.
Carter says, hanging on every word, Kelin. And Julie says, go, Kelin. I love Carter and Julie. They're our biggest fans. They're the best. Thank you, Carter and Julie, for being such loyal viewers. Sticking it to YouTube. We talk about what we want. Carter and Julie, what would you like to talk about today? The Minnesota shooting. We could continue to beat that into the ground.
Yeah, we've never talked about that before.
I know. Should we talk about politics? Should we talk about the left and the right fighting? Because we don't have enough of that on the internet. YouTube's like, yes, do that.
Sports, food.
I don't know anything about sports, and food probably will lead me to GLP.
You just did it. Like,
I didn't finish it.
All right. An acronym for global lobbying phenomenon.
What does that even stand for?
Let's not talk. Let's go.
I saw a really great Bill Maher video this morning. I think I sent it to you. Did you watch it? No, you don't watch anything I send to you. Carter says, we have fun battling with Julie. Julie says, no more Minnesota.
No more Minnesota.
Yeah, everybody's done. Everybody's done fighting about that. We talked before about who would be sort of the ideal candidate for each side during the next election. Obviously, I think J.D. Vance is going to be the conservatives pick. And then there was a couple names floated for Democrats pick. But we've also talked about if you could take someone sort of out of the political spectrum and lobby them up for consideration. I think Bill Maher.
Which side, though?
I think he would want to be on the left, but he is middle ground enough that I would consider him, because I don't choose to vote on parties. I choose to vote on who's the best person for the job, who makes the most sense, do I think is going to be the one who has the best ideas. And I tell you, I'm liking Bill Maher more and more.
Okay. Just because he's reasonable?
Yes, because he's reasonable. He's kind of funny, but he's reasonable.
Okay, so the executive branch running a major institution with hundreds of thousands of employees. You're going to take the guy that he's funny and reasonable,
and he'll
think
never
he has
make
any
it.
kind of skill set in the executive branch. Was this DEI? Let's do let's do the quarterback. Let's make the quarterback president. He'd be a really good president because he looks really good in those pants. Did I say
he's going to make the best president? Did I say I could totally see him being put up as the candidate?
You said you might even vote for him.
I said I'd consider it.
Yeah.
I'd consider anybody running.
Why don't you pick somebody who runs large organizations with exceptionalism and efficiency? And that way, when you put them in a large institution, they could be excellent and efficient. Pick somebody there.
Julie says Bill Maher could never be a politician. I don't think he'd want to be a politician.
Yeah, you're correct. He would not.
I don't know what kind of person wants to be a politician. Do you think that it starts off as a noble venture, or do you think it's got to have a little bit of not narcissism, but you got to kind of like fighting? I feel like you got to kind of be down to throw hands and.
See, I think that's where we went most wrong, is that public service is supposed to be after you've accomplished something and after you're good at something, then you sacrifice yourself to politics, right? Or into public service. But now we have people that they don't ever want to get a real job. They don't ever want to cut a paycheck. They don't ever want to see how the marketplace works. They don't know anything. They become professional politicians, and that is the majority. And
they're leading those that do know and have done, because that makes sense.
Yep. So we get that very wrong. It's very lucrative to become a politician. And that's why it's attractive to people like you always heard, the people who are good do and people who aren't good teach.
Yeah.
Right? That teachers, professors, politicians, they all are being sacrificed to this. And we pay the price for it because, you'd really if you're and you're a professor in finance, right? Then when I ask the professor how they set the world afire in finance, they can't say that they did mergers, acquisitions, scaled businesses, whatever. It's primarily I just went to school for a really long time, and that be good at it. Be a master at it so you could teach the grasshoppers.
Julie says Bill Maher could not be a politician any more than Joe Rogan. I get the idea of, like you said, you would want them to sort of be accomplished in a certain field in order to do that. Yes. But look at what we just said. We don't have that anyways. So if we're already throwing that to the wind and we don't care and we're just going to elect corrupt people in it for themselves, why not?
Yeah, just a popularity contest. And if that's what it's become, but for people to refer to it and then put the quarterback as your, council president, and then they're not good at doing anything, like you can do the first one, no problem. But complaining that somehow that person doesn't get a whole lot done is like whoa.
I mean, you'd have to know what you're getting going into it, because really, do we have an example of anyone that is really good at what they do in our government?
No, because that's not what we're pursuing.
So then why not Bill Maher or Joe Rogan? Why not? That's all I'm saying. It's not like there's a standard being upheld that they don't meet, right?
Okay, so here, let's solve that. You solve it with three steps, right? Number one, money out of politics, where you financially basically separate yourself from your finances when you're in public service. You can't make money with, speaking engagements. You can't write books. You can't invest in the stock market. You can't take bribes from NGOs. Your accounts are just frozen for the period of time where you're doing public service. So now the attractive of the lucrative side, people are just like, hey, let's just say Elon Musk, right? And he comes to the door and says, okay, Elon, now that you've retired from, your 19 companies, we want you to run the government, right? Because you're really good at running lots of people and things. And, but, you're going to have to give all of your wealth over to your trust, and you're not allowed to invest, and this thing pays $0. Elon would be like, well, I already made my money out in the real world. I don't need to come into government to be able to make money. I'm cool with that. I would believe that he wouldn't do it just to become wealthy in government. But you have dumbbells like in Congress who go in there making, a bartender that she's nice looking, but she was making $30,000 a year. And then like 2 years later, she's worth 30 million. And then there's not a single like auditor that's going, how'd that happen?
Yeah.
If it were you and you went from $30,000 to 30 million, they would look at your drug distribution, and they would kind of look at you a little bit and say, where'd that come from?
Yeah. Now, don't you think a lot of people said that about Trump, is he doesn't need the money? Yeah, so good candidate. It's somebody, didn't he even like not take the presidential paycheck?
He didn't do any of the things to make people less suspicious. He pulls a lot of bonehead moves with his son. Like if it were me and my family would come in, and we would never want to be suspected of trying to make money off of the government. I'm preaching it. I've got to, put it in the real world. And what did he do? He released some kind of Trump coin or something like that. And of course that's going to be like, okay, well, you're trying to scam people and whatnot.
Yeah.
His son does a lot of business contracts. Like, I don't mind even like Elon Musk getting contracts from the government, but you can't like give anybody an advantage because of their friendliness towards the government. So it looks a whole lot like if his son didn't get that contract, which I would have said conflict of interest, you can't do it. Let's find somebody else to do that contract. You'd have to make the argument that there are no other companies that aren't directly related to the president that could fulfill that contract. I'd give it to them way before I would just hand it to my son, because what are your critics going to say? He got the contract because he was his kid. That's nepotism. And now, I mean, they were going to argue that anyway. They were going to criticize that anyway. So he's probably just like, screw it, might as well. Yeah. But it's still, that's the slimy part of politics is the money.
Carter says, I think Glenn Youngkin would make a great president. I don't know who that is.
Governor of West Virginia, or Virginia, I believe. Is it? I think it's Virginia.
I don't know.
Yeah, he's a Democrat, very middle of the road. His constituency are very coal oriented, and so he, in spite of his being his team does not like coal at all. He stood up for his constituents rather than his party. And so I think he's a fairly decent person. Do
you feel like when a candidate is chosen to be the is that the word I'm looking for? To be the person they select?
Party nomination.
Yes.
Okay.
Do you feel as though they sort of have to have like some kind of reputation? Like, it's almost like it's always somebody that is already so well known and in the news, rather than somebody doing a good job but flying under the radar.
So
if that makes sense.
The political consultants take a first wave at it. They take all persons and they see what their electability. It exists on a spreadsheet. They roll it forward. Has nothing to do with if they can do the job. It has everything to do whether they're electable, and it gives them, before you put
it's like their celebrity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It could literally be anybody. So, you throw a couple of these guys like Bernie Sanders is a highly electable person. But when you run it through the sheets about if you have a bigger loss, whether or not Bernie can become president, but then your entire Congress is wiped out and you have ill effects down ballot, then he becomes less electable because the consultants know the grand schema of things and they only do things that supports that grand schema. Voters vote very independently, where candidate yes, no doesn't usually connect with other people or other state ballots or anything like that.
Yeah.
That's why the consultants really will dictate who becomes, the nomination or the nominee.
Julie says, I want someone who knows the law, both constitutional and international.
Strict constitutionalist. I never thought I would hear Julie say strict constitutionalist, because if you heard the Supreme Court and you have 3 justices who know the law, and the stuff that was coming out of their mouth was like, I don't think you know what an interpretation is versus like a activist, ideological bent.
Yeah. She says Trump has invested, what is that number? 100 million in bonds that he has direct influence on. Just saying.
Is that the mortgage bonds you're talking about? So, I mean, it's fair. It's fair to be suspicious that anybody that gets involved in government has a money end, right? So if you're looking at all the people who are working the system just to get extremely wealthy, I don't think Trump is on even the radar, right? I mean, you have people spilling out of Minnesota with briefcases of $750,000 in it. The government was just vomiting money at all of these groups that are connected and affiliated on the Democrat side. So they were, if I want to plug the leakage, I don't think Trump is the biggest leaker. He might be on there where someone is costing us way more money than we're getting good value. But so long that inflation stays low, employment stays low, the marketplaces kick in, people have jobs, then, he's electable. And you can say even if he was stealing and giving contracts to his friends, as long as his constituents are fat and happy, right?
Yeah.
He's golden.
Yeah, just keep us happy. Give us what
when
we
you
want.
say there might be fraud going on, everybody's going to say, yeah, fraud's going on absolutely everywhere.
Yeah, like if you're handing out money to people, and even though don't look at the debt we're in and don't look at where I got the money and don't look at what it's going to affect later, I'm handing out money. I'm keeping my people happy.
Yeah.
Carter says he's a Republican, Joey. And Julie says Carter would never endorse a Dem. Oh,
I didn't know that. I thought he was a Democrat. Okay.
Not until they get a cure for TDS, is what Carter says. Won't endorse a Dem until they get a cure for TDS. I can hear Julie. Listen, Julie, you don't have to have TDS for other people to have TDS. It's a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Can we all get on the same page? It's a thing. And maybe Julie doesn't have it, but some people do.
And I'm really getting sick of the executive order conversation. I had this with my kid the other day, and I know that the precedence was set, and then if the legislators are worthless and they can't get anything done, then you have to get something done with an executive order. But that's not how our system was designed to work, right? Even if I agree with what the executive order is, that there's a better way of doing it that doesn't make the problem even worse. Because if you don't think Democrats are going to be like, oh, we don't have the legislature, can't get anything done, and then they say, hey, let's just do executive orders on everything, right? You wouldn't want that.
Yeah, before you know it, then you're just going straight to that. I don't need any other process.
What they have absolutely done, and that's why we look at our Republicans, they can't agree on anything. You even have defectors within the Republican Party who can't seem to get, their groups together to vote a single way. They're just all over the place. It's a mess. It's chaos.
Bill Maher and Joe Rogan looking a lot better, aren't they?
No, could never do
it.
Could never do it.
I don't know about never. don't think that if they wanted to, they could get more and more and more involved and increasingly kind of work their way into...
it would be terrible on their end. They have brands that are doing extremely well.
Oh, they would have to give that up for sure.
They have talked to enough people to know that once you go in the government, you're as ineffective as you can possibly be, unless you charge head on at the problems and get killed on the character side of things.
So listen, we're constantly talking about how awful it is once you get to that government level and running the country. Then what do we do? If saying, let's think totally outside of the box and let's find somebody completely uncaptured, maybe somebody unable. Oh my God. Oh, I can't believe you just did that. You're lucky that didn't spill everywhere. And completely unable to be captured, unable to be bought, able to remain biased, and just this perfect candidate we say either doesn't exist, or if they exist, I like that, they will eventually become corrupt. Then what do we do?
Are you talking to the libertarian and Joe? Because he has an answer, but he's had the same answer forever.
Is it an answer that is realistic and able to be done?
You could totally do it.
What is it?
But it's unrealistic because the people who can do it will never decide to do it.
The don't pay our taxes thing?
No.
What?
So libertarian is all about small government, right? Taking, you have this big apparatus that can do many things and can't do any of those things well and jack up everything. So what you do is you don't have them do things. You shrink it by taking duties that they were doing and move it to somebody else. Sometimes anybody else other than them. And in this case, smaller government means like, okay, let's just say you were going on vacation and you signed up for concierge. You want somebody to book your tickets, set up your rides, make sure you go to the restaurant you want. Everything you need, concierge does. You'd be willing to pay up for that. And then an interaction, right, where they didn't do a great job. They didn't do everything they should. They were late on things. They just messed up everything. And you're like, man, that concierge service. Now you have a choice. You're like, the next time you do it, do you go to a concierge, right, and just give them all of your responsibilities? Or you're like, oh, wait, I can do some of this stuff. And if I want it to go great, I'm just not going to ask them to do that thing.
I want it
but
done
then you're
right.
going to have some stuff. You're going to be like, okay, they can do this better than me and whatever. So I'm not going to give them everything. I'm just going to give them ones that matter. So for instance, if there was a threatening, a country threatening us, they're going to fly planes over and they're going to take aim at us. Do you think you and your friends can protect all of us from airplanes coming into the country? Right?
No.
So the answer is I can't do that myself. So that's a job I'm going to give to you. You can do it better than I can do. I could do it in ways, but I know you can do it better. So you get that military thing. That's all you.
Yeah.
So you go to one thing at a time and say, if you're either asking permission or getting insights from the government, see if you can do it better elsewhere and take that role and responsibility away from them. And you could just go down the list. I bet you they're probably in charge of 1 million plus things, right? And so on a regular basis, you're like, every month we got to take 10,000 responsibilities from you, let somebody else do it. And sometimes it's going to the private sector and getting privatized version of it, where the company that we're contracting it with, they become responsible for the efficiency. So if you're a concierge travel service, would you trust a private company to do your vacation or the government to do your vacation?
Private company.
Okay. Because you have controls. You can decide you don't have to go to them. You can have competition where there are 1,000 of them and they're all competing to give you the best service at the best price. Right. So the cost controls are fixed that way. So it's if you do a bad job, can I fire you? Yes or no? If you can fire them, then it works. So if you decide, if the government says, hey, we're going to bring unemployment down to 3%, right? All we're asking is for $100 billion in this budget. Okay. And you say, sure, now you owe me less than 3% unemployment. If you get 3% unemployment, cool, I'll give it to you a second time because you did a good job the first time. If you don't do the thing, then you don't get the $100 billion back anymore. So there was no, if you had a pharmaceutical company, I would give you money if the pharmaceutical did what you said it was going to do. If it actually say, hey, this right here we'll do X. And if you do X, I buy from you again. But the problem with government is there's no constraints. If they do a bad job, they still get more money and they can continue doing it forever. 50 years later, we're still solving a problem, never giving you a result. And you're like, wait, I have to still pay you? I can't break up with you?
So, yeah, how then do we make it so that we have the ability to say, you didn't do it, I'm moving on?
Take it away from them. That's the only way to do it.
How?
Is to shrink government by taking it away.
The people who vote on doing that are the ones who don't want
exactly
it.
what I said.
So we can't do it.
We can, though.
How?
Okay, so you have a couple guys like Rand Paul, right? Who pay attention to the budget spending. Tom Massey pays attention to budget spending. If you shrink the budget down where you get to the edge where you can't spend any more money without causing devastation, there is no money to give, then I can't budget spend. So if my budget shrinks from $7 trillion to $5 trillion, did I not effectively get rid of $2 trillion worth of things the government was doing before they're not doing anymore? If there were 10 NGOs and now there's one NGO, that is somebody doesn't have to do something they were before. If we fire 500,000 government employees, there are things that the government was touching before that now they can't touch anymore. Limiting the resources means that they don't have exposure. If I hired 100,000 IRS agents, and now you got a whole building full of these people who are like, we got to give them something to do. Don't you think the effect is that they're going to do IRS stuff and they're going to cause influence where if you only had 10 of them, they would be very limited in scope because we cut the resources down so that they couldn't spill over into areas they need not be in.
Who's the one doing the cutting and the firing?
Well, Doge started, right?
And people fought back against that.
It's not over. It's not over.
They fought back because they have an allegiance to the opposite team that didn't hire Doge. So even if it is a good thing and it makes sense and it's going to help us, there's a whole other side that benefits when the one side fails. So they will always have stake in the game to make something not work, even if it's the best choice.
Yeah. And then we have lobbyists. People spend a great deal of money to capture the votes of people. Like if I don't want the 10% credit card from the banking industry, and I really like my 30% interest rates on people right now. And President Trump says, I'm going to force banking to do 10%. You don't think that lobbying group made sure that there was not enough votes to get what he actually wanted? And the executive order bypassed that because the bot people weren't, getting their money. But don't you think that is something that's going to die on the vine for sure? 100%.
So we have the ability to change, but it's based on if the people in power now suddenly grow a conscience and say, I want to actually do what's good for the country.
And that's the thing. Like you can curtail lobbying by putting strict limits on it. But the thing is, there's a million nipples, right? And everybody's latched on theirs. And they're all there to make as much money as they can and become electable. So if you can rail against somebody else's nipple, right, easily, because it's not going to take away. Well, what happens when it's your lobbyist? So if you're like, lobbying should be cut down to next to nothing, all I got to say is, hey, do you want AARP to when you're an old person, you want them to fight for your Social Security check? Do you want your groups? How about the union that looks through your contract? Do you want to limit education lobby? And when you're like, well, no, not those ones.
Yeah.
The NRA, keep those lobbyists going. But if everybody has lobbyists and they have a voice that's bigger than voters, then you have to curtail it. You have to slowly, through attrition, cut off the resources and funding that explode these things and might make them unmanageable. Minneapolis, like the fraud was so rampant. Do you think it was rampant because it's completely just nefarious behavior? Or people looked at it and said, this is too big for human beings to manage anyway, so they're not even be able to catch it if there is fraud. You could probably send an invoice to the federal government and automated systems would pay it, and not a single person would look to see if you legitimately being paid. Why? Because they receive 1 million invoices. And if everybody looked through every one of them suspiciously to make sure it could get paid or should get paid, then it would just take too long. We don't have that kind of time and energy to do it. But if they're receiving 10 invoices, now you can be a little bit,
And
look at it with some more gaze.
Yeah, interesting. Like I've talked before about the blunder from Alabama unemployment and when I was laid off during COVID and how they're now saying they want money from me. And I'm like, no, I never got money. This is an error you made. It's an error they made during COVID when there was an extreme influx of people calling the unemployment office. And they were like, whatever, go ahead. Everybody just whatever. 5 years later, they're like, hey, there's an error. And we might have sent out a check we shouldn't have. And I don't know if we did. And the error was on our part and something we did. But now 5 years later, we're going to make you pay for this. And it's like, no. Right. But because now they have a minute to actually say, oh, shit, what did we do? Let's start backtracking.
Yeah. So if you do a welfare program and you know your current infrastructure, how many people it can support, the minute that you go over one more person than you can manage, you don't continue to blast money into a hole that nobody's managing. And that's where we're at right now. It's far too big and complicated. So we've got to, shorten it. If we were like, hey, you know what, government's not doing this well, we can't manage it, there's too much of it happening, let's offload 50% of welfare for feeding children or whatever to churches. Let's just give it to them. We'll spend the same money that we did before. And then the stipulation is now you have to manage it well. You have to sit down with welfare recipients, go through their decision-making, coach them into making better decisions, help them with making sure their kids have food, go. And if they're really good at it, then they get contracted where the government was terrible at it. They're good at throwing money into the abyss, right? They're not good at making sure that money is effective. Where the government can say, I think there was a food, this was Minnesota. I mean, if you think that Minnesota is the only one that's involved in this, you're crazy. Yeah. You're absolutely nuts. It just so happens that a YouTuber brought that one to our attention, and all of a sudden all the fraud seems to be coming from Minnesota. And that is not the case.
I mean, didn't they find some in Ohio?
Connected to the Minnesota one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm sure it's all over. We have a couple interesting comments, I think, up a little bit. Trump was a billionaire before he was president and don't think money motivates him at this point, more like power. I can see that. Julie says, I've been doing some research on libertarianism. I could kind of go there, sort of.
What's your objection to libertarianism? Because I'm telling you, within the libertarian tent, usually it's like what inspires people to go there is it tells their flavor of libertarian and that they are. I am more on, I would say, the middle right of libertarianism. I can see where every political persuasion sort of has a cost, a downside. And if it's gone to too much of an extreme, it becomes something that you absolutely want. So the goal is to kind of keep it wrapped up in the middle. So I have, I'm a big believer in the market and capitalism, but also that when capitalism, gets too popular and has too much power, that it could be a little, oppressive to certain people. And so unfettered capitalism is not a libertarian ideal, but, strategic capitalism is more the flavor that I believe in.
Well, she asks, thank you, Albert. Albert says he really enjoys our show. Thank you. Julie says, could there be a populist libertarian hybrid? What's populist?
Well, see, populism is like take your constituency and do a poll with them of what's the most important to them. So if they all say X, then you're moving with the popular flow of whatever. You don't have a principle that regardless if people like it or hate it, you're beholden to. It's whatever the people want, right? Like if you had democracy and said, hey, we're going to spend $1 million in your city, everybody vote what you want us to spend it on, and we're going to take the top 10 things and spend $1 million on that kind of a thing. And the problem with a populist approach is that people's interests are getting voted from the treasury, and they're doing things that benefit themselves, right? And you can't really have populism without then creating a crime to somebody else, because government money is not magic money. I know they print a lot of it, but it comes from a taxpayer or a bondholder at some point. So in order to pay for one thing, you have to take it from another person. And that's why libertarians are like, we're against theft in wherever it is. And I think if you can figure something out that you can give something to somebody without taking it away from someone else, I'd be for it. But there aren't too many populist ideals that are going to not require, somebody else to be stolen from.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Jerry says, just a sidetrack comment. Why is no one using the term premeditated on the Minnesota ICE shooting with respect to the protesters' overall actions of illegal protesting in streets and following ICE around?
Yeah, if you ask, like, if you were, what do they call them? Some kind of observer, the people that just follow ICE around?
I don't know what they call them.
Yeah, there was a name that the girl who got shot was actually one of those, people who were designated a official ICE follower around her. If I'm interviewing her, I'm saying, why did you do this? Like, what was okay, so you're going to drive around. So if you're asking your 10-year-old, right, that they had red paint and a paintbrush and they walked into the living room, right? You would be interested, like, you don't know what they were going to do next, but you can have in mind that there's some things they can do in your living room that you would have some kind of opposition to. So you're like, what did you have in mind? If they were like, hey, I'm going to do a project in the middle, you're going to be like, there are better ways of doing this. And you can have some influence there, right? If they're like, I was going to write on the wall. So if you have a hypothetical list of 10 things that an observer that's following ICE around, they could have been, locations that putting it on the internet so that illegal immigrants can hide from ICE. Is it that one? Is it that you were just going to get in the way? My whole intention was to just get in the way and obstruct justice or obstruct the investigations. Could be that one. Could it be that I thought it was really cool and dramatic and I just wanted to drive around and, talk to these guys because I think they're cute? It could be any one of them. Yeah.
Could be we were just going to make social media content and be
right. Get rich off of it. Like each one of those means something different. And if, I believe that if you put out to the internet,
this is not the 330 sports show.
That wasn't me.
This is not the 330 sports show.
There we go. What the heck were we talking about? Oh,
premeditated ICE.
The instigators.
Where's
those
our comment section.
Those who.
Thank you.
Those who have relayed to the world that they are looking to commit a crime. So if you and I are talking on Discord and like, hey, you know what? I'm going to go hit up the cash advance place at the corner, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do something illegal. Well, I should be able to investigate that. When I come across that conversation, you didn't rob anybody yet, but we're going to have a conversation about what you're about to do. And so whether or not it's, I'm going to do harm to a sheriff somewhere, or I'm going to obstruct justice or obstruct a nice motorcade from doing their thing. All of that is capturable, right? You can have your investigators going out online, infiltrating these systems where this chaos is being, choreographed, and stop it before it ever has a chance to do it. Make it really hard to happen. I'm not saying throw them in jail, but make life a little bit more difficult so it's not so easy to plan to break the law, right? And do it publicly.
I saw an interesting video this morning. It was Adam Carolla was talking about the left and was saying they're constantly yelling about the chaos, the disruption, the chaos really that's going on. And look at all these horrific things. And don't you all just want this to end? And we want peace back. We want all this bad stuff to stop happening. But it's of their own making. Like, if
that's on purpose, though.
You make chaos and then you yell about, oh my God, look at all the chaos. But
that's on purpose.
Yeah, that's their game plan.
If things get chaotic enough, then individuals are, they're more willing to give up their liberty for the government to solve the problem, right? And so Democrats know this, and the more crisis they can make available on the news 24/7, the more likely that Joe's going to sit there and say, yeah, I just want this to end. I'm really cool. You want to put a 9 o'clock, what's that called? We're not allowed to leave your house. Curfew. You put a 9 o'clock curfew. I'm cool with that. Just make the chaos stop. They know this.
He told a really good story about, like, let's say a wife's or a man's wife was like, I want to leave the door open at night. And he said that you'd say, well, no, you're going to have like raccoons and stray dogs and animals coming in and tearing things up and bringing garbage in. And we can't just leave the door open all night. But the wife's like, no, I'm leaving the door open. So what happens? Raccoons and animals come in and tear things up and they make a mess. And the husband's like, look what happened. Now everything's a mess. And they get into a big fight. And the next night it happens again. And there's chaos in the house and things are ripped up. And the husband and wife are fighting again. And he's like, we need to shut this door. No, we don't. I want this open. Everything's fine. Until the kids go, enough with the fighting and the mess and everything. Please just give her what she wants. Please just stop the noise, stop the fighting. Just give her what she wants. And he's like, or you can shut up and then we'll have peace. Like, we shut the door and you shut up and that's peaceful as well. You know, and pretty good analogy, I thought. Jack says, I suspect she believed that the illegals should not be deported. And she believed in
the cause.
The cause. Just like pro-life protesters at abortion clinics. Yeah, I'm sure she did believe in the cause. There's a difference between a protester with a sign on a sidewalk shouting what they believe and putting yourself directly in front of an armed agent. There's a difference. You could believe in the cause and you could think, this is all I can do. Nobody's going to listen to me if I just have a sign on the sidewalk and I'm shouting what I want to do. It's ineffective. So I'm going to get in my car and I'm going to go physically block them. That's one way to do it.
Yeah, you
wouldn't recommend it.
You are sacrificing your liberty going into it when you break the law, that you know that you can be thrown to the ground, handcuffed, and put in a prison, go before a judge and get punishment of some kind. That's part of the sacrifice. So it's like so the sign wouldn't make people listen to me, and I want people to listen to me, and I'm not going to accept that my ideas aren't good enough for people to listen to me. So I'm going to give up some of my liberty and be that they're cosplaying as like these historical, pillars that did the noble cause and sacrificed themselves, right? Mm-hmm. When somebody can explain to them, here's what's really going to happen. You're going to be a blip on the headline radar, right? And you're going to not affect anything. They're going to still drive and do whatever they're going to do. So you stop nothing. So if you're willing to sacrifice yourself and nothing changes whatsoever, then in America, we have a due process for everything. If you want to make a change, do X, Y, Z, right? Go get a bunch of signatures, run for some kind of elected office, and vote your way. And even if you vote your way, you might be one amongst 100 and you might still lose. But at least it's the process that you want to change. You get people on your side and you try to change it legally, right? So you'd have to make your case to the majority of the country that says, you know what, illegals, they add so much here. They're just people too. And when everybody says, we don't care, we're still going to say no, right? Then you lose and you're like, oh, I got to pick up my messaging. Half the country doesn't believe me and want to go along with it. So either I can say, I'm going to hijack everybody and force them into my ideals, and that's the coercion part of the Democrat Party, or I'm going to get better at messaging and I'm going to persuade you into my idea and make more of them. Bad ideas are bad ideas, right? And they should always die. And that's why the liberals are angry, because their bad ideas have always been bad ideas, hard to prove, hard to keep the narrative, especially when you don't have the capture of the media anymore. So it's very difficult to get those kind of bad ideas to stay alive. Yeah.
Julie says, fascism is intentional chaos. All we want is no fascism.
All right. No more fascism. It's out.
Do you find that a bit hypocritical?
Why?
If anybody is the fascist, it is the far left. If anybody is, it is them. If anybody is creating intentional chaos, it is the far left. So, tell me I'm wrong.
I'm a definitions guy, and I don't know that we're talking about the same thing. So, Julie, tell me, what is fascism? Is it just conservatism, but putting on like fangs and, a scorpion's tail? Like what when you say fascism, what do you mean? Because I don't know many pro-fascists in any of my orbits, and I don't see pro-fascism things happening.
Mm-hmm. She says due process was thrown out the window with the Trump regime. So did the Trump regime make somebody decide that I'm going to, instead of using my legal rights to protest in a legal way, I'm now going to illegally do whatever the hell I want in the name of protest. Trump did that. Trump made people do that. Trump made people say, I don't want to do it the legal way. I choose to do it the illegal way. Because if you think that, then let us know. Maybe he did. Let's look at that. It's funny that Joe is preaching about due process, but fails to talk about how ICE is violating due process left and right.
Well, that has been asked a bunch of times, right? And the discussion is whether or not, if you are a citizen of the United States, you get due process is afforded to you in this respect. If you are an illegal, you're not a citizen, what is the due process? And I think a lot of liberals want to count illegal citizens and give them the same processes as if you were a citizen. I think that's the disagreement there. I think that everybody should get the due process that they're afforded. And if someone doesn't give their due process, so for that Garcia guy, right? So the complaint was that haphazardly threw him in a plane and sent him off to Venezuela or Portugal or wherever he got sent off to. All right. And the liberals were saying due process wasn't followed. So then we said, well, okay, what is, if you had a gang member who was not even a citizen of the United States, what is his due process? Do we need warrants? Do we need a court appearance? Do we need a jury selection? Does he go through the same thing? I still can't tell you, because I think because the discussion happened that if you are here illegally, let's just say you didn't have a house and you were running through the desert, right? And ICE came across you where you just crossed the border 9 minutes ago. What would they do? They would get you back as quickly as possible. I don't think you're going to go through the legal system when they say you jumped the fence. I watched you. You're in the desert. I watched you. Now I'm going to put you back over there because you never should have been here. If the argument is that they are legal citizens, then that's the discussion. But if it's like you're here and we just took a long time to catch you, there's no difference than then picking you up and just sliding you on the other side of that fence. But it's a good question, and I haven't got an answer that really satisfies me up to this point, because I can assume, like, okay, you are a green card holding student. You're given a card that says you can come over here. You're not a citizen, but you're doing this. You follow these rules, and you can go to college here. Mm-hmm. Well, you start a protest on a college campus and you cause problems with the police. So we're like, okay, we granted you an exception. We're allowed you to pretend like you're a citizen to get your education, but you didn't follow the rules, and that's stipulated in the offering you a green card. Didn't follow the rules, get packaged up, sent to another country. Well, due process for taking a citizen who did not have a green card would go through the courts and in front of the legal system. But a person who was on an asterisk, permission to be here, they have a completely different set of guidelines that they have to follow to stay compliant to stay here. So if you are a citizen, you have to go through the proceedings to become a citizen. You have to learn the language. You have to be a good contributor, and you have to follow all of the laws, right? That should be a prerequisite to becoming a citizen. With Democrats being allowing so many illegals to come here and cosplay as citizens, then the waters got a little murky between like what should be afforded to someone who isn't even supposed to be here.
Yeah, like you said, you got to come in, you got to make sure that you go through the process, you got to make sure you have your documentation, you got to follow all the laws and be a good citizen. It's like sometimes the Dems are like, well, look, they're following all the laws and being a good citizen. Done. Wait. There were more prerequisites to this. Yeah. Just because you're following the laws and being a good citizen does not mean you did everything else required to be a legal citizen. And while that doesn't feel good to kick someone out who is following the laws and being a good citizen.
So
I'm not saying it feels good. I'm not saying it's something we like.
Why does it feel bad? Why does it feel bad? So, okay,
it might not feel bad, but
you went on vacation, right? While you're on vacation, somebody broke into your house, right? Mm-hmm. Broke into your house. Wow. And the whole time they were there, they did a little sweeping while they were there. They served themselves by cleaned up after themselves, right?
Yeah.
And when you come back, you're going to be like, get the F out of my house.
Yeah.
And then your husband's going to say, but look, they cleaned up after themselves. They completely were a great occupant while you were gone. And you're going to say, no, get them. If had you asked me, different story. You behaved once you were here, but you entered illegally without permission. Nobody invited you here.
Yeah. And along with them come the mass murderers who are not going to be law-abiding citizens. And you definitely don't want that. Somebody had asked earlier if we could pull up the definition of fascism and read it.
Yes, I certainly can.
We will do that. Let's. Fascism. By definition. Super grok. Is that in place of Google? Most debated and difficult political concepts. Can't we just get a definition?
There is no single universally accepted definition, but modern scholars have converged around a few influential approaches to identify fascist minimum, the core elements that distinguish fascism from other forms of authoritarianism, nationalism, or right-wing politics.
We are now no longer agreeing on the definition of words. Mm-hmm. What is the definition of fascism? That's so ridiculous.
Here's the core tenets.
Nobody knows
fascism.
Is what it's saying.
Okay, extreme nationalism. Okay, so what is nationalism?
Nationalism. I don't really know, I guess.
Okay, so if you had Canada, Mexico, and the United States, and you walk down the street and said, hey, what's the best country? And you live in the United States and you're loyal to the United States, you'd be like, the United States is freaking awesome. It's way better than Canada and Mexico. I want to preserve the culture that we've created. I like the culture that we've created, and I'm proud of that culture that we've created, whatever it is, whatever the dynamics are. Nationalism has been taken to extremes when you get things that pollute your nationalism. So let's just say we carry the American flag, right? And then there's some people that start carrying some other flag. Well, there's a pollution of what we're national because we're unified that the United States flag is the best, and you have the Japanese flag. You are now polluting the nationalism because you're bringing an idea that's separate from mine, right? And so the United States is really good because we're tolerant of all other things. So you can come grab your flag and do whatever. Extreme nationalism is we say, hey, we're going to put out a bulletin. If you have a Japanese flag, we're going to be rounded up and put you in prison. Where nationalism goes too far, it starts alienating the people who are different outside of that culture. But there's a purity and a traditionalism that is supported. And it's just, what do you pick? Do you pick religion as some part of your identity? The color of skin that's part of your identity? If you do any of those things, and the people that are outside of what you consider the standard of your nation would be are, punished or alienated or disenfranchised, then that's where the extremes of nationalism. I don't feel like we pick a group of people and somehow make them less thans, right? I think we've achieved a level where if you said you're Muslim, I'd be like, cool, I'm not, but let's watch some football, I wouldn't use nationalism to the point that I would, want you not to be around because of something that you believe. I think we're tolerant.
Do you think the extreme lefts don't want certain people around and want others to be above others?
Yeah.
So there's one.
Yeah. It's
not
not
unique is closer to fascism.
Right. It's that whatever your identity is, if it's different, if you're in the minority, then you want the minority standard to be the primary. So if you have English speakers versus Spanish speakers, if 90% are English speakers, you'd love it if Spanish speaking was the identity of your nation. But if it's not, you just have to learn English or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Authoritarianism, anti-democratic, anti-liberal, anti-communist, socialist. So authoritarian. And basically what that means is you have a supreme rule, right? Somebody who gets last say. Our decision-making in our government is basically separated with 3 branches of government. There are authorities within each one of those branches, which would make them authoritarian light, right? Because they have, once it's been given something, they have full rule and can't be overturned by any of the branches. But once they're permitted, they have full rule. So you can see an authoritarian if you made it so that you had one complete thing was managed by one complete person and no oversight within anybody who would criticize or have different ideas. So
So extreme left, when they say, don't bring Doge in here, don't look at what we're spending our money on, don't tell us what we can and can't do, is that close to, again, a characteristic of fascism?
It can be both.
Okay. So we're 2 for 2.
2 for 2.
What else is fascism?
Okay. Cult of the infallible leader.
Oh, glorification of violence and heroic action. Let's go to that one. The glorification of violence and heroic action. What side does that sound like?
I think we're 3 for 3.
Yeah. And again, I'm not talking about all Dems. I'm talking about the extremists.
Rejection of Enlightenment values.
Rejection of Enlightenment values, such as individualism, universal rights, rationalism.
Okay. Subordination. Often racism or xenophobia. And collaboration with elites to gain power.
I mean, Julie wanted to elaborate. We did.
Okay.
She can have her rebuttal. Carter says, where was the due process when Biden let millions of illegals in the country with the welcome wagon? Ooh, Jack says, or Matthew says, Carter out here with the 10 IQ comeback. All right, Matthew. When you start hurling insults in a grown-up conversation, you now have lost. And I don't mean that to be, all right, there was a little condescension there. I did mean a little condescending.
You lost.
Matthew has this like MO of, I'm going to interrupt this discussion, which is an important discussion. The reason we have these discussions on this show is because these are topics that affect our entire country and world, and they should be allowed to be openly discussed. And people are allowed to have opinions, and being accepting of other people's opinions is what we're all supposed to do. Anti-fascism, if you will. And what Matthew tends to do is tune in just to go, you're stupid. You're a big dummy head. Yeah. And listen, the grown-ups are talking, and if that's all you got,
well, let me give Carter and what he said, because there's some honesty in this. Where was the due process? So if and that's why the difference between an ideology and a principle is that you have to apply the principle whether you like it or not. And if you like due process, then you have to like due process everywhere. Right? You can't be like, when it benefits me, I'd really like to skip the due process because that's inconvenient. And so when due process of entering the country, right, comes into play, what is the due process? What do you do, right? If you say that you're from a country that's warring and you fear your life, you go to this place, you fill out this piece of paper, you wait for approval, or sometimes are allowed and come back when it's approved. You pay the money for the lawyer's fees to get it done. You learn and take a test to be a citizen here. That's your due process. And so the Republicans deal where you can't have someone who disregards due process on one end and then wants the protections of due process on the other end. So maybe I explained that a little bit better than what Carter said, but it's been discussed so many times. Everybody already knows what he means by that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't an idiot's comment, right? He didn't say that to be stupid. He's absolutely right.
Yeah.
Like, I'm bought in. Let's do due process everywhere. And if you don't like the process, work through it to change it so that it becomes better. But you can't ignore the due process sometimes and then need its protections later.
If you just entered the chat, as the kids say nowadays.
You've got total riz.
I know. If you just entered the chat, saw one comment, and you have zero context behind that, and you say, oh, you're stupid, low IQ, that just shows how ignorant you are, because all of us knew what he was talking about. Anyhow. Julie, I'm going to give you the Google search of fascism because it is a lot of typing. Fascism is a far right
and far left.
Yeah, this is where Google becomes biased. That's a biased statement on Google, but let's keep going. Fascism is a far-right authoritarian political ideology characterized by extreme nationalism, a dictatorial,
dictatorial.
Thank you. Leader, state control over society and economy, corporatism,
Or socialism.
suppression of
Or
opposition, militarism, and a belief in national rebirth, often using violence and propaganda to create unity and target enemies, subordinating individual rights to the state's perceived needs.
Yeah, and really, nationalism is mostly a natural consequence. Communism and socialism is a contrived. Same thing at the other end. So if we'll use the where the government takes control of something, has authority over something, like your healthcare. In order to do social healthcare, I have to take something from you, right? Give you no other option. And then you have to come for me for that thing. So I agree that there's corporatism and all of these different interests try to take a control. And the libertarian deal is that it's never a permanent control. You don't do anything where you take. So if I took your property, right, that would be showing you that I own your property more than you. But if you have a house that you bought and I have no means from just taking it from you, right? So if you didn't pay your property taxes, I come in, I take your home from you. You never really owned it, right? So these lesser forms of fascism are exhibited from the extremes on both sides of the political aisle.
Yeah. I'm not saying there's never a right-wing person that exhibits fascism. Both sides do. And it just so happens we're in an era at the moment that the far left are the closest to fascists. And what's so interesting is the bias in that. I once looked up the definition of Antifa, and you'd think it was like this left, peaceful, anti-fascist, everybody gets their own rights and gets along kind of group. And I'm like, but that's not what they do. So there is bias, unfortunately, even when you Google something, it's pulling from, isn't Google kind of pulling from different pieces of information on the internet? Anywho, that's a whole other topic about bias when you're looking up information. But
yeah, I want to look at fascism more as a temporary verb than a noun, because I don't think anything, will be fascist and be fascist forever, but they're actions that lead to the verb fascism. And I see them happening, and they're, like I said, they're exhibited from both sides of the aisle. So if, viewers and listeners out there, if we can agree that we don't like fascism and we see it, we'll punch it in the mouth. How about that? Both sides.
Both sides.
Both sides.
We all hate fascism.
We do.
Let's see. Obama deported 3 million. He did it in the right way. What else? What else we got?
Trump talked about immigration problems in the book he wrote before 2016 election. He had good ideas to reform the process, streamline to allow the good guys to stay. That never happened because you got an ideological deal. Remember, politicians, they want to get elected, and immigration and illegal immigration benefits Democrats more than they do Republicans. So if there's an advantage in getting a voter base that is dependent on you and will vote for you if you give them things, I can see why Democrats wanted the border to be completely open. Where Trump is more of on the conservative side, where if you had a pool of 1,000 people that wanted to come to this country, I would handpick the ones that are going to give the best net effect on our economy, on our labor force, or on our innovations, right? So if I can pull 100 doctors, and we need doctors, I'm going to pull them first because, that's what we need most, is more specializations, bringing in people who can add things, to our way of life. And the Democrats are like, you don't want to bring doctors in there. You don't want to bring high specializations. You want desperate people who will clamor to the government, use services, use them in such high concentrations that we'll need even more services. And that helps the Democrats to be able to do it. So it's like this weird fascism, this weird like hook and leverage point to bring more dependence, which creates more of a socialist communist utopia. And
it is interesting that all these people like Obama where you can find clips on the internet about him saying, we can't just let anyone in.
It was popular. That's
there has to be
the
a
danger
process
of the populist approach, like Julie said, is because the populist opinion changes over time. They were only able to say,
they have said the exact things that are being said now, except they've changed their tune.
Like gay marriage. There was a time where the populist view was that gay marriage, we wanted to be sanctified as a man and a woman. And then as popular opinion changed, and what was popular and got people elected was to say the exact opposite. So I could play something. Oh, crap. I just spit out of the side of my mouth. Anyway, so you can have Bill Clinton saying, I can't do a Bill Clinton voice today.
Bill Clinton's gonna say.
Can't do it.
I don't know.
Anyway, he could have it get in the 80s and 90s him saying that marriage should be between a man and a woman. You can get a 20-year down the road and have him saying completely the opposite because popular opinion changed and politicians went along with the wave of what was popular.
Yeah. Let's see. Nazis were extreme right nationalists. Fair?
For sure.
Yeah.
National identity.
Yeah. Yep. Joe, your version of less than is liberals.
Less than. What does that mean?
You might have to elaborate on that, Matthew. I don't remember when he said less than or what you were referring to.
The left is great at going to insults. And I think it's because they're so passionate. They think the right and anybody in the middle just don't have the information. So they're a little delusional about what makes the different thought processes happen. And so they immediately think that if you are questioning vaccines, right, that somehow you're an idiot. And they've already programmed that in your brain. It's not because
you're anti-science.
You're just an idiot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why they go to that, because they're just fielding that bias in them that anybody who doesn't feel like them is just, antiquated, archaic, primitive part of our species. And so you must be an idiot.
Meanwhile, because you question Tylenol, I'm now going to overdose on Tylenol.
Yeah.
RFK Jr. tells us to watch what's in our water. Now I'm never drinking water again.
Yeah.
Like, come on. Project 2025 and Stephen Miller.
So you are okay with the direction our country is headed? Trump suing universities, media companies. Suing them? Like, I don't know. This stuff is out of the territory. I wish we weren't in the territory. But if you had, okay, so what is the purpose of the media? It's to dispense information to the masses, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're doing your job, then you can't be sued because you are just taking information and passing it off.
Mm-hmm.
If you are selectively editing something to make a candidate look better or excluding certain pieces of information for bias, then you're not doing your job.
Yeah.
Right. But how they're being sued is they're being deceptive. And when anybody's being deceptive, if a banker was being deceptive, if the media was being deceptive, but what makes me extremely uncomfortable, who gets to decide and be the arbiter of what is deceptive? Because if you ask Matthew, he would say, when I'm questioning vaccines, that I'm the one who's being deceptive. If I have a curiosity where I'm trying to figure something out that I don't know or might be wrong, then I'm being deceptive, because now me challenging the status quo means that somehow I'm making things worse because somebody else might challenge the status quo.
Yeah. Media is important. Journalists are important. The people have a right to know what's going on. We should be able to know what's going on. And we have to have members of the media to go ask the hard questions, get the information, and make sure we are informed. 100%. If there is a media or news outlet that gains from painting a certain administration in a good light and painting the opposite in a bad light, if they receive funding, if they receive benefits in any way, and it is shown that they have knowingly and purposely edited a story to push a narrative that maybe isn't even true, then I absolutely have no problem with somebody suing them. Whether it's the president or anyone else.
If we went to the 80s and 90s where you were limited on the media that you got exposure to, then I would take exception that the government has the ability to silence or put out of business or have a weapon against media that are saying things that they don't like. Now there is an infinite amount of sources. So what we need to do is, like, if I were setting the press pull up, right, I'd have a pretty good idea of what persuasion each media organization was all about. You'd have the independents that didn't have a bias. You'd have the ones that are biased on the right and left. And I would stock that entire press pool with people that were of all persuasion. So even if the MSDNC, I think they changed their name, right? MSDNC decided to go really anti-Trump and very pro-Kamala, right? At least I know that I have a Fox News in there that could give the information on the other sides. And then, constituents can put those two together and get their own messaging, knowing who's, where.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what I'll do is if I see a headline break on one side of the aisle, I'll go to the opposite and see how they're saying it. But ultimately, what I want then is who's got a full unedited clip of what this person said or did. Where's the full speech? Where's the context it was taken? And the moment I see one of the sides paint that differently to push some sort of bias, I'm like, well, thanks for proving that you can't be trusted.
Yeah. So, but conspiring is the only dangerous part of the media, which, let's just say, what was Rupert Murdoch, right? Mm-hmm. Has a bunch of money, buys a ton of different media outlets, and then controls the narrative on all of those media outlets. So he's conspiring not only that a Fox News can do something, but everything that he owns can be, uniform. It's almost like if I had a corner with two gas stations and they were competing against one another and they were driving prices down and I wasn't making as much money. If I go and buy them and then I conspire to make the price fixed so that competition didn't happen. Well, that happens in media. So long that we have opposing views, then the marketplace works itself out. But then if there's a George Soros and a Rupert Murdoch that are just trying to outbuy the news agencies, all I've done was create propaganda on one side or the other. So maybe it's like you can only own 10 media outlets, limited, hard cap, let somebody else own it. And that way we at least don't have the conspiring that goes on in the media.
And unfortunately, I think, too, the American people and human beings in general, we have a little bit of this responsibility. It is a little bit of our fault that certain media outlets can do this, because it is a fact that bad news sells, shocking headlines get the clips, things that are going to amp you up and rev you up because of the way they're worded or make you want to fight back or shock you are going to get the attention and they're going to thrive. Whereas anything that is good news, anything that is completely neutral and unemotion evoking is probably going to get buried.
Yep. And make no money, and they'll never do that again.
And we did that. We do that because we proved time and time again that strategy works.
But and just like our corporatism, like corporatism affects media because now it's just transactional, where they're not, like, they don't have an obligation to get to the news. They have an obligation to get clicks. And so when you corporatize media and make it such big business, that's the end result. And so, there was a time where I think it mattered more. I think it matters less that, we protect the media from getting sued. I used to think that when a media outlet, a Dan Rather, would misbehave, the media outlet would get punished by everybody, left or right, would say, oh, they're not telling the truth in their media. Done. I just never going to give you a chance again. But then you move over to another network after you've done that, and they own that one too. So what are you going to do? Not buy from any of them?
Yeah. Yeah. Carter says, very well explained, Joe. He got my point. Grok even said it's far right. Far left, by definition, cannot be fascist.
Yes, it can. We illustrated it in 5 different ways.
We just said it pulls from what's put on the internet.
Fascism as a verb, if you take something, like you're an authority and you take control of something, that is fascistic.
If we're okay, let's say fascism by definition cannot be left. Then let's make up a new word, because they are doing those things. And if you don't want to use that word, then we'll make up a new word. And just because somebody put it on the internet that it's far right and can't be left does not make it true. And what does Grok and Google pull from? The internet.
Yeah. And it's become pop culturized, and that's why like the true meaning of it, we don't even know. And everybody has their own definitions. And that's why we can throw the word around as an insult to people so often, because in your meaning, it's an insult. Me, I'm like, it's a definition. If it's a synopsis.
Yeah. Maybe it began as, like somebody said, the Nazis, and maybe it began as far right in the definition when it ultimately became a widely used term because of what it was describing at the time. I'll accept that if that's the case. But the characteristics of it today is describing the extreme left more than the right. Right now. I'm not saying it never did. I'm saying today, you've got to admit that a lot of the characteristics are being exhibited by the far left. And so if we can't say fascism because by definition, the word was created to describe far right, then think of a new word that also incorporates every single one of those characteristics.
I like that we've had this conversation because part of my brain is like, I can't believe we're talking about the meaning of a word.
Semantics. Yeah.
And at the second time, like, we need to have this conversation so that when people use it, they know that some people are taking it from an academic, real world position, and some of it, they're just using a word they heard someone else use and it sounded good.
Yeah. And that's kind of where we are now in this country too, which is so sad, is nobody can just all agree on something before we even argue about it. Like, I've seen debates where they say, here's our topic, and before we begin, let's make sure we're on the same page about the definitions of it. Are we clear on what we're discussing? Yes. All right. Now let's start giving our opinions. Did you happen to see, what's his name? There was a hearing, the guy talking to Dr. What's her face? Can men get pregnant? Do you know what I'm talking about? There was like a Senate hearing and he was talking to a female doctor and he says, yes, can men get pregnant?
I'm trying to think where that was.
Yeah. This was just the other day. And she would not answer the question. And he's like, I'm not pushing an agenda. This isn't me bullying you. This isn't me trying to get one over. I'm simply stating you are a physician. You're a medical doctor. And I want to know, can a biological male get pregnant? And she would not answer the question. And it wasn't her being stupid. It was her being captured. She's like, well, I have a lot of patients that I identify as different things. Not what I asked you. That's fine. You can have patients that identify as different things. Can a biological male get pregnant? And this woman would not answer because we are in a day and age that you might offend someone if you simply can agree on a definition of a word or an instance we're discussing or whatever. We can't get on the same page about a single thing to then bring opinions in. It's like we now got to fight over the definition and what we're actually talking about. So then we're fighting over what? Everything? Now there's nothing. Like, anywho.
Yeah. That drives me absolutely crazy. It does. Joe, you should invite some YSU professors on here to talk about this stuff. It's hard to go back and forth via comments, but I bet YSU has some good professors that would be knowledgeable in this. Yeah, I agree.
We both know a YSU professor that we're friendly with who's really great, and we've talked to him before. And he was an old professor of mine. Unfortunately, it depends on the subject matter. I've asked him to comment on, not comment on, but I've asked him about his feelings with gender because I took gender communication at YSU, and he was like, "Oh, you couldn't pay me enough to touch that. I'm not touching it, not doing it." Like, it's almost a little too controversial now, certain topics that they don't want to publicly talk about it because, as we have proven time and time again here, you can't say anything without someone fighting you. You can't go on the internet and say anything.
I consider that soft fascism.
Soft fascism,
yeah.
That you can't say anything without someone fighting you on the internet.
If you control language, that's what you're doing, is you're controlling language. That you're telling people that if you talk about something, you will be punished by what is popular.
Yeah.
And so if you can take an academic who does have an opinion on something and know that they will be fallout if they take a position, you've controlled what that person does. And that is a fascistic behavior, right? If you wear a pink ribbon on your shirt, you'll be arrested. That's what fascists do, is they control you by controlling your language, your actions, your behaviors, what you believe in, what you do. Freedom is the opposite of that, where you can disagree, you can wear your pink ribbon, and you know you are not going to be thrown in jail for what it is that you do or say.
Shooting someone, murdering them for speaking their mind on a college campus. Is that a fascist idea? Because you didn't like what they were saying?
Oh, that's very fascist.
Well, that's what I thought.
The threat of death over speaking your mind, well, that's very fascist.
It's extremely fascist. I think we all get my point there. Far left fascism is like saying a progressive conservative. Far left fascism.
All right, we're getting too much into semantics. I mean, we took the word, we know when it should apply, and I can say that
I don't think we agree on when it should apply, but
where should it apply is that if you don't like fascism, if you don't like authoritarian control over your thoughts and actions, when you see it in front of you, you could say you're not a fascist, right?
Yeah.
But you are doing things that can lead to fascism as the verb. And when we see those things, we're like, oh, this person wants to control my activities by taking control of my healthcare. I don't like that. And I'm going to say no because I don't like fascism.
Yep. Carter says, I'll pick Joe over any YSU professor.
Really?
Carter's such a fan.
I could be a good teacher.
What? Okay. And Janet says, and what was so wrong with DEI? Fox News.
What was wrong with DEI? It was discrimination. It was using, like whether or not it be giving a job to someone because you wanted a specific outcome rather than the merit of, putting someone in a position.
Mm-hmm.
It was inauthentic. It was fake. It was a lie. And I'm glad that it lost a lot of its popularity. It had a lot of corporate support for a while because the populist attitude was that it benefited them because they looked like they were the noble company. And now after you see the results of it and where it went wrong the most, that it's less popular. And I agree that, just like in subsidies for businesses, if you need to put a short-term catalyst to get something to happen, like if we looked around at teachers and it's dominated 90% females and we wanted more males to be in a teacher setting, if you did a program that, enticed or invited men into the teaching profession, do it short term. But if I was just like, I want 50% split of teachers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make 50% of the seats unavailable to women at all. Well, there might be a really good teacher that had high merit and can't get that teaching position because you've got 50% of them, allocated for someone who doesn't want the job, isn't qualified yet for it. But since you want it so bad, you're going to displace the good teacher for the thing you want. And that's just evil.
Yeah. I still want to check out Ground News. Have you tried it? I don't know what that is.
Ground News, I have not.
Ground News. I don't know what that means.
And finding the whole story on thing, I'm going to tell you that I get almost all of my news from X, right? I'm telling you, you guys don't realize how much Elon saved us by purchasing X. Like, I cannot think of another uncaptured, unbiased means of getting the information that you want that's curated for you. It's not perfect, but it is better than anything else that's out there. Google News feeds, Yahoo, all of those other, aggregators, because that sounds like an alligator. So aggregators, right, are still have a tendency to deprive me of the kind of information and news that I'm looking for, and they go after the bigger news sources rather than the ones I would select. And so, like, I'm reading stuff from agencies that I wouldn't pick up their newspaper or open their magazine or even turn on their deal, but the information would flow into those aggregators where all the stuff that I didn't want to read. But in X, I get to select by following and, reading the comments of certain agencies. So there's ones that are maybe on third tier news agency. I get primary in my feed for those, and the New York Times and whatever, I don't follow, I don't engage, I don't look. So it completely disappears from my radar. And I love that.
I should maybe, I'm not on X. Maybe I should be. Let's see. Which one do you want? Feelings on invasion of Venezuela, now Iran, Greenland next, then Cuba, possibly Colombia. I don't really have any feelings on it. Is it just kind of conversation right now? We've not actually done any other than Venezuela. The going after Greenland, Cuba, all that. Is that kind of just talking points?
I hate this conversation altogether, right? Because as an interventionalist, non-interventionalist, I don't like us mucking in other territories. Either we're going to say that we're going to capture and increase our territory through conquest, right? Which we did that for a little while, and it was really messy and created a lot of problems. Most of our assets that we have today were because of that conquest. So I know it was necessary. So grabbing Greenland, like, do you think we should have Greenland? Do you think we could take it from the Danish? Would we want it? Does it give us some kind of strategic advantage?
I don't know.
All right. It makes me feel uncomfortable that we're willing to take over a territory when Greenland is not exactly suffering. They don't really need to be taken over.
But here's what I mean when I say, are we? I mean, it wouldn't be the first time Trump just sort of floats an idea out of his head that probably shouldn't have come out of his mouth.
But it's happened. He started off his term talking about taking Greenland. It's new in the news. So he's fixated. It's not a distraction. He really wants Greenland as part of the strategic whatever. And it would be helpful to be able to know what that true strategy is. Yeah. We had military bases there so that it wasn't even like that part of Canada or that part of the Atlantic or whatever ocean is up that way. It wasn't like, we didn't have presence there already for a sneak Russian attack or China attack or whatever. They've got resources that they're not exactly using at this point. So I could see us wanting to, if we had a lithium deposit with an enemy right now, we need more lithium, and we go to Greenland where we could just take it over and then harvest those resources. That's good for the national interest to have access to more natural resources, especially if, it's pretty safe because it's not like Greenland's going to put up a fight if we wanted to take part of the territory. But I think it's it's a big risk, and I don't know that there's going to be a hell of a reward. I think honestly, if we were like, hey, Greenland, we're going to do business with you a lot, and we're going to, partner with you on getting the resources. You've been friendly with us. We've been friendly with you. So I think there were other ways other than taking the entire thing that it would have been a little bit more popular.
Didn't you and I have plans for Greenland at one point?
Yeah, we were going to send people there.
Yeah, it was going to be sort of like the halfway of coming
taking
here.
Immigrants. Yeah, it's our what's the Liberty Island? Where's that place?
Ellis Island.
Ellis Island.
Yeah.
So, Ellis Island, immigrants, when they want to come here, we put a USA light on Greenland.
Yeah.
And then you go there and you participate for a year and you don't cause any problems, break any laws or whatever until you're waiting to come to the United States proper.
Yeah. Then you kind of pass all the things you need to do and then you come. And if you don't, or we find out that you're a criminal or whatever, then we send you back. And all that sort of takes place in Greenland.
Yeah. It'd
the
be
halfway
a nice
point.
Nice place to live, I'm sure.
Still might be cold. Not a bad idea.
Cuba, and I think the other three that you mentioned, Cuba, Colombia, Venezuela, if the drug activity coming out of those countries and the state of those governments, like if you look down in, right below us and Russia and China take great interest in an area, you have to take great interest in that area too, because China and Russia are not looking out for you. They are staging cooperations, below your border. And that is a dangerous thing to have your enemy so comfortable in South America. And so by you getting retaking influence, that might be a good strategic move from a national standpoint. CNN pushed Russian collusion and the laptop that was fake for 3 years. I don't believe a word that comes from CNN. But they catered to the people who watch them. And if they broke laws, they should be imprisoned and put in a jail. That's a slippery slope because once you give firepower against media agencies, it could be misused where I just go after you because I don't like what you're saying. And that's why I'm super uncomfortable with it. Now, what that did was that emboldened the media to go off the reservation so bad because they hid behind the protections of the media. And I don't think any assault on any of those networks that have been sued have been just to silence or shut them up. It's been that they've actually misbehaved and, were due some kind of punishment.
Yep. There was Russian interference in our election. They couldn't prove that Trump colluded with them.
Right. And in every election, there's interference. And as inept as our government is, knowing that our enemies try to create chaos and disrupt us, just like some of our citizens that live here and non-citizens that live here.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, every election, they are trying to compromise. One tool that X allowed us to use where you could see what country someone is posting from. So if you got a news agency, you used to not be able to see that the last time that they threw something on there, they were in Russia. But then now that you can see that, you can kind of like filter out some of the, other countries trying to disrupt or cause chaos or try to get you fired up or whatever. If they're all coming from India and Russia and China, you're like, why am I getting my news from people who are mortal enemies of our culture, right? And that they're just trying to get you fired up.
Trump is ignoring all laws, both in this country and worldwide laws. Why does he insist on taking Greenland? Let's sort of mention that.
What laws is he ignoring? Trying to think of any that
law he's ignoring.
All right. See, I can't think anything off the top of my head. So if you can kind of guide me into what law you think he is breaking. Tired of listening to politics. It's Youngstown's talk channel. Maybe talk about Youngstown Day. Reason being we can't have an effect on Youngstown, but never have an effect of change of the U.S. the world. Fair point, Mr. Jerry. And
fair point, but also Youngstown's talk channel based in Youngstown, but we are allowed to talk about other things. We're based in Youngstown, and we talk about everything.
But Jerry wants to hear something about Youngstown.
Yeah.
I'm willing to talk about Youngstown. What do you want to talk about?
My husband told me this morning that what's it called? The plant that you like? The AI plant.
Data center?
Data center, yes. Yeah. The people trying to bring that are suing. Is it Lordstown?
Are they? I hope so.
I didn't watch this, so I could be butchering this.
Catching everyone up. So there's extreme interest in putting data centers all around the country. And they're using mostly brown spaces. Things were already deemed for industrial purposes, old warehouses and where steel was manufactured, old mills, and spaces that you can get dirty. And we're kind of already, it's been dirty once, it can be dirty again. And Lordstown was, they took interest in Lordstown, one of the major, I think it was ChatGPT and the companies that were behind that, putting a data center in Lordstown, and fought tooth and nail. The council for the city did not want a data center to be located in Lordstown. And really what's required from a council is to learn about it, present it, and have it voted on. I take exception because these councils will put a moratorium, a waiting period on something while they discover details. But if they don't ever want to deal with something, they will put a 1-year moratorium. See, a moratorium to me is we need to call experts and we need to do research, and then we'll come back to you, give that to the voters.
Use and let this them time to actually
decide,
investigate.
Or decide whether or not a permit is issued. And what that happens is when you get something like data centers where it's waning public support because of the consumption of water and the electricity competition for your grid, and
incessant humming,
the humming, the noise pollution that ends up happening. So then you do your research and you find out, okay, what is the consumption and how are we going to deal with that? What is the draw in electricity and can we handle that? What is the humming and how can we dampen that? And then you present and say, here's what it's going to be, right? Here's what we're planning, and then let it proceed either with a yes or no. But the moratoriums are killing me because they're just doing them to kick the can down the road. And they're not actually researching deep in. They're being obstinate that they don't want it to happen and using the moratorium to get away with it.
I think that's the lawsuit. I think, again, I didn't watch it. I sort of heard it. But But yeah, the lawsuit is you're dragging your feet now. You're doing this on purpose, and you're just trying to stall and not make this happen, I think.
So Elon Musk announced that they're putting a big data center in Mississippi, $20 billion data center in Mississippi.
Wow.
Would you like to have a $20 billion data center in Lordstown, Ohio?
I'll be honest. Part of me wants to say yes.
Okay.
Part of me is, if there is actually an incessant hum and my water pressure decreases, no.
All right. Water pressure will not decrease.
Okay.
Because these are mostly closed loop systems.
Okay.
Right? And what they'll do is they'll make an initial draw of water off of a river, a lake, whatever, right? And they will put it into a closed system where the water circulates, warms up while it's cooling the devices, and then goes into a cooling station, but it just recirculates the same water. So once it's filled up, you don't have any more water draw. But in the interim, the dangerous part is if you're sucking that much water off of the ecosystem where you have normal drainage, that you could actually draw things up from that are deep underground and buried up closer to the surface. So all of these things that you manage with a plan, so that council can say, all right, we have a concern that, if you pull off more than 10,000 gallons an hour, then you're going to affect groundwater in people's wells by pulling things upward that normally wouldn't happen. So how are you going to fill your water systems and do it safely so that you don't affect that ecosystem? And the person on the other side of the table says, oh, we didn't think of that. And then it's like, good thing we're doing a moratorium. So go think about that, because we're not approving anything until you tell us how you're going to deal with that. And then if they have a good answer, like, okay, well, we know the 10,000 is too much, so we're going to only draw 5 million or 55,000 gallons off per hour, which should keep it safe so that we're more in line with the more natural flow of groundwater. And now that's your answer. If you're cool with them being safe and doing things at a slower pace, it's going to take it a little bit longer, but then they can be compliant with what the city feels is going to be legal. Same thing with the humming and the frequencies thing. All right. So you go to a place that was just built and they've got dampening to keep the frequencies contained within the building, and a house that's 100 yards away. Maybe that's the thing where if you take a decibel meter and you walk around, you can't have any of your noise pollution reaching beyond 100 yards of where that is. Now you've thrown down the gauntlet of, if you want to come here, we want you here, but here's all the things you needed to protect the community from what could happen and has happened in other places.
But you can't say, hey, here's a real concern we have. The company says, okay, I can show you what we're going to do. Hey, we got to wait because we got this big concern. Well, no, let me show you my answer to it. No, we got this concern. We're going to have to just keep on waiting. And
right.
It's like,
and that's how councils work. That means they're just getting in the way of something rather than, if you have an interest, just make sure it's done safe.
Okay. I think we got a bunch of comments below. We're getting there, guys. We're getting there. Let's see. These are from some of our previous topics. Okay. What's the red Solo Cup one?
What?
Joe's got a red Solo Cup. Do you know about the lines meaning certain measurements?
I do. I think that's a 2-ounce shot. That is a 16 ounce. Well, no, that would be probably 8 ounce. And I don't know.
Is that true?
Yeah, lines mean something.
They do that on purpose?
Yes. Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah, there you go. See,
I learned something new today. Red Solo Cup.
Is mandating experimental vaccine fascist. So your fascist flag should have gone up and said, we are extremely uncomfortable with the government being able to overreach and control actions and be an authority on something. So yes, as long as those fascists were uncomfortable when Biden or previous Trump or anybody else who took control of something.
When I heard our government is making you put something in your body, that made everything go, what?
Yep.
What?
Yep. And that's why I feel, as a libertarian, very uncomfortable with anything that has fascism verb involved.
Yeah.
Carter won the election twice. He did not win it 3 times. The idea that Biden somehow falsified the second election is ridiculous and anti-American. You lost. Get over it. But the curiosities, especially the things that even have come out now, vote tabulations. I was reading this one yesterday that they had, I think 100,000 votes, and it was somewhere, I want to say either Minnesota, somewhere up that way. Minnesota is just like the whipping boy of our states. Everything bad happens in Minnesota.
Yeah.
But yeah, you had governments that were trying to get ballots, foreign governments trying to involve themselves and put some fictitious all Biden votes, 100,000 Biden votes in a voting scheme that posted the votes in the same number count like 100,000 times in a row. Very suspicious things. So again, just like every country tries to, mess with us and mess with every election, if there's a weakness in any of our systems where voting happens, you either do things to make that less, you don't make it zero, right? There's going to be fraud, but you either do things that increase the availability of fraud or decrease it. And the Democrats are very pro increasing the probability of fraud. No voter IDs, these ballots that we just harvest from neighborhoods, leaving the door open that you're creating more soft spots and vulnerabilities in our election. So it's not off the reservation for Carter to say that the election was very fraudulent. It probably had a lot of fraud votes that were in there more than any other because we changed how votes were cast. We put these boxes where you could just drop off 1 million of them. And we created a lot of vulnerabilities with an intended purpose, but our enemies took advantage of. I'd actually feel better if I knew a foreign country tried to do that than people who are my neighbors. Yeah. Those are the people that are anti-American. When they wanted Joe Biden so bad, they were willing to give up the integrity of our election to get that guy in
Those
office.
are the fascists.
Those damn fascists. Fraudulent elections.
Ground News is supposed to show all the angles and expose the bias. That'd be cool. X is the best source for news. LOL.
Absolutely. Carter, this is the problem. You see American politics as a war to win when it's not that at all. We should be working together instead of trying to win some kind of battle over politics. That's why people get all upset when conservatives try to play games over being liberal versus conservative. But Matthew, if we really just wanted to have unity, right? Democrats can't go 45 seconds before jumping off of that whole unity thing and going after conservatives. You cannot do it. There's so much anger and resentment about where we're at that the petty politics is, I can pass on it because I hate talking about it anyway. Democrats cannot pass. Joe Biden says, let's turn down the temperature after something happens, right? Something chaotic happens.
Yeah.
He couldn't go 2 press conferences before ramping up the temperature again. He can't do it.
Matthew is the only one in this comment section today that called somebody a name or called them stupid. And then Matthew, you say,
we need unity.
We need to be working together and we're not arguing to win.
But I bet you Carter would be more willing to work with you, even though you just called him an idiot, than you would be to work with Carter because you think he's an idiot.
Look at Carter and Julie. They can banter and they can argue and then they can shake hands and go about their day.
Very important.
I'm not sure Matthew can do that. Planes are on the tarmac.
Okay. Janet asks a very important question. Where are the Epstein files?
Where are the Epstein files?
I wonder that every Friday when I do my weekly update about how there are predators still doing important things, making lots of money, still in positions of power, nobody indicted, nobody went before a judge, and nobody's in prison.
Speaking of that, Hillary Clinton did not show yesterday, did she?
So both Bill and Hillary did not show up for the hearings on the Epstein files.
Yeah, supposedly there is a push to act on holding them in contempt of Congress. You think they will do anything?
Hold your breath on that one.
Does anyone think the Clintons could be going to prison? Anybody?
No.
Anybody?
Obama's not going to prison.
Clintons aren't going to prison.
Nobody's going to prison.
Nobody goes to prison.
That's my prediction. Nobody's going to prison. Except
unless they are lower tier.
Yeah, if you can get me some lower tier fall guys and put a bunch of people in prison that get blindsided by this.
Kind of like yesterday where we're like, well, Steve Bannon and what's his face went to prison. And we had to actually have a discussion about who they are and what they do. Mm-hmm. I think anybody would know who the Clintons are and who all these, and those people, not ever going to go to prison.
Taking Greenland will destroy NATO. Do you think maybe NATO just needs to be destroyed? Do you think it just needs to start over? Do you think it will, being the sugar daddy of the United States, is not going to pay all of NATO's bills and be the sacrificial lamb every time?
Yeah. Ideally, it would be changed, but do I think it will? No.
But you can't ignore that, during the Cold War, there were threats that everybody knew was important to have a world agency that would keep those threats in check.
Yeah.
Right. So you're going to judge how well has NATO done at going after countries that are posing a threat. How thick are their balls when it comes to that? And it's not very. We've forgotten that it's even a threat to have nuclear armed countries that use nuclear to control countries and to, if NATO was a real thing, right? Mm-hmm. Then the North Korea, every time that they said, we're going to have a nuke, right? Nobody in the organization wants North Korea to have a nuke. But they still develop technologies that enable them to get a nuke, and then everybody pays them off, right? Gives them money because their brand of communism creates not a great country, not great services, not a good population that's very prosperous.
Yeah.
And so they use the threat of nukies to get money, right? It's just a business for them. Like every 4 years, like, hey, bank's account's getting low. Let's say we're going to have a nuke and everybody sends us money and we're good for another 4 years, right? So if you were NATO and you're like, okay, countries with all of superpowers, people that have money, let's all do an equal share into this. And we're going to go to North Korea, and NATO forces are going to say, listen, you can't use the nuke threat anymore against it. That's against what all of us agree in
the
agreement.
Geneva Convention.
Right. But if you have China and Russia, and you have terrorist nations that have influence within NATO, that they forget their purpose and their principle. It's almost like they're pro everyone but the United States, pro Western ideals, right? And it just became, it's a tool that's not working in the interest of the United States. So why would the United States continue to sacrifice themselves, send them money when there's no U.S. interests that are being performed by something we're paying a buttload of money for? So that's why I think NATO needs reimagined. Reimagine NATO.
Carter kind of said what I said. Work together when you said 10 IQ. Give me a break. Matthew says, I wasn't trying to call you stupid, but your argument to me was very shallow, hence why I called it a 10 IQ comment. Carter says, I accept your apology.
I love Carter. That was perfect.
I accept your apology. Oh.
Could all the odd and huge swings of attention and unhinged words and actions be an indicator of a larger issue with Trump? The substantially swollen legs, ankles, the bandages, Band-Aids on the back of his hands, indicative of infusion sites, his slurring of words while speaking lately, his posture while standing and walking, more hunched over, etc. These are all indicative of a frontal temporal dementia. And I think this strategy doesn't do a lot for me. I think he's almost an 80-year-old man who has 80-year-old man problems.
Yeah.
And I think he's about the same as he was at the first term, the way that he speaks and what he says. I haven't seen a drop off. Like you compare where Biden was and what he's capable of doing and saying versus him. I think Trump is, I want to see 60-year-old presidents, not 80-year-old presidents anymore. So I hope we solve that.
Yeah.
But I don't think that I know you're hoping that there's a drop off. Any reason to get rid of Trump? He's unhealthy or he's a fascist.
Huge swings of attention and unhinged words, I don't think is a new thing for Trump.
It's been there since the beginning as far as I know. But yeah.
What
curiosity, look into it. If he's unhealthy, we'd like to know about it. But
yeah, I mean, he's almost 80. I would not be surprised at all that there are some things failing there.
Yeah, and if he fails, then the administration around him will just run deals. The auto pen will make sure legislation still gets signed. We're good.
Yeah, it is going to be cool to potentially have a much younger president, whether that's Vance or whoever. But yeah, I'm with you. I think we keep getting these incredibly badly aging presidents, and it's like, oh Can we get someone that's a little more spry, maybe?
Yeah.
I like Julie's comment. Joe and Kelin, do you think you can be brainwashed? I'm assuming what the answer is. So why do you think you are impervious?
Yeah, you can. And I've caught myself when I listen to an outlet too often, I start, taking some of the ideals and I don't question them. It's just laziness more than anything. So if you're in an industry you don't really care about, but you want to know about it, you're more likely to be able to pick up what you've been told and not say, do I know that to be true? And so when I get lazy, the thing about me is that I am really eager to change my mind on a dime. And it's not because I'm an idiot. It's because when I collect more information, I'm cool to change my mind. Yeah. So brainwash would mean that if you told me that I'm wrong and I'm defiant and I stick to it and say, well, no, I'm right, that would be what I consider brainwash. Am I captured at moments where I need more information before I get to a full truth? I am sure I've had elements where I too soon got confident in some kind of idea, and it happens regularly.
Yeah, I used to blindly hate Trump, and I couldn't tell you why. Because people I knew didn't like him, because he seemed like he was kind of a jerk, and I just pushed hard on that. I don't care who was running against Trump. I'm going to vote for them other than Trump. I just hate that guy. And then I went, maybe I should actually look into some of this stuff. Maybe other people have points. Maybe there's some good things to look at here. And again, I don't love Trump, but I started to see things differently once I looked at other things. Admittedly, I find that I will become a little defensive over RFK Jr. because for a while I was looking into a lot of his information. I was on his website. I was watching interviews about him. I was listening to his speeches. I was seeing what other people were saying. And it got to be where the moment somebody said something that sounded contradictory or unpleasant about him, I was, like knee-jerk reaction, I got to defend him. And I did start to realize, let me quell the fangirl and make sure that they don't have a point. Is he actually a little crazy? Is he actually a little misguided? Does he know what he's talking about? And so I had to go back and, again, I still like him, but I had to watch that instinct to defend him and actually say, he is still in politics. He is still a human being, and he can do things that either don't make sense or I disagree with. I still like him.
Okay.
Yeah. Hope that answered your question.
Brian says, Joe, link in your message to the WFMJ article posted yesterday. Okay, I will take a look at that later. Matthew says that's what happened, and Amazon built a data center in an old farmlands and pulled up nitrates from the table. Yes, that absolutely happens. And once we know that, and when you have an industry that's sort of in its infancy, we have not ever done this to scale with so many data centers. And so let the people who are engineering this find out the downsides and adapt and fix those things so they don't cause a problem. So if you built one and you didn't pay enough attention to the frequencies and humming that happen, the next one you build, make it better. And eventually we can adopt out and set these standards so all of them are uniformly protecting their local cities, villages, towns, states, whatever, from doing it poorly to doing it, right. So.
Jerry says, ouch, Kelin, didn't mean to have you feel I was looking to direct your program to local issues. There are many local topics that people can help work to improve our area. My bad. Ouch, Kelin. Sorry to try and program direct to something local and possibly have an effect on. I apologize for asking or having an opinion. Jerry, I was mostly kidding there. And that may not have come off. So sorry, Jerry, if it seemed like I was being defensive. I was mostly kidding. Jerry is cool, and I like Jerry, and I like his comments on here.
Well, we have opinions, and we never have sheets of paper telling us what we're going to talk about. We are guided by whatever is important to you guys. So throw something out there. If it's something on the local side, if it's something on the national internet, I don't really care. We have opinions about everything.
Yeah, and we asked you guys in the beginning of the show, what do you want to talk about? So, Jerry, that was sarcasm on my part, which clearly didn't read or come through, but you're all good.
You would feel better if Russians infiltrate. Well, let me make that more clear. I would feel better that it wasn't what would supposedly be loyal Americans wanting to undermine, the institution of voting and democracy versus someone who I know doesn't have our interests. So it makes me feel bad that I'm amongst people who would sacrifice what I feel to be, important versus someone a sworn enemy kind of thing.
Yeah. Bill didn't show because he's afraid of revealing his affair with our current president.
Funny guy.
Okay.
Rockland County,
that would be
New
an
York,
interesting headline.
Zero votes for Kamala, even though Dems won down ballot. Lawsuit in progress for sure. And I think that anywhere, because I honestly, if you had 2016 and you saw a bunch of cheating, and then you saw 2020 and you saw a massive amount of cheating, you have two choices. You can either stop the cheating from happening or go do it yourself too. So I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of zealot Republicans decided to just start doing the same shit that the Democrats were doing. And so you just had a cheat fest where we were trying, instead of just making it a person that wants to vote can get a ballot and it can be counted appropriately and relayed chain of custody to where it goes. That's all we want out of it. Anything that breaks it, makes it harder, makes it more complicated is just inviting more fraud into the system. And we are very weak on how certain areas are open and vulnerable to fraud.
Yeah.
And banks figure this out, right?
Yeah.
Banks have a way that if you take money out, they know if you should take that money out and recording it so they don't let you take it out more than once. Like we figure out how to make one transaction important enough to pay attention to and make sure it's secure.
The Epstein files are under 15 more news distractions that are spread out over the next 2 to 3 weeks per distraction.
Emmanuel, do you truly feel that they are working hard to get indictments from the Epstein list? Do you get any indication that other than, go through millions of pages of documents and just like putting them out there so no one has time to read any of it and nothing new ever gets put out? Like by the time that they release a document that actually has something, we're not going to read them anymore because we got so millions of pages of crap that are meaningless.
And kind of like what he's saying is, as soon as the public cries out again about the Epstein files, here comes a huge
another dump.
story.
Here's another 100 pages. Oh yeah, the distraction.
Yeah, that's kind of what he's saying is like, oh, we better release something big. What happened? Oh, Minnesota, or oh, this happened, and don't look at the Epstein files.
Yeah, and the Epstein files now have become so politicized. I don't blame either of the Clintons for not showing up at a hearing because the left was like, I want the Epstein files because I know Trump is there. And then the right's like, I want the Epstein files because I know Bill Clinton's there. And it's just fodder. Like the rest of us just want to know everybody who's there. We don't care who's on it, just that everybody that is on it and did things that were illegal go to prison. So we're not aligning here. When it's political, it's stupid.
Yep. There's a bunch more. Oh, we're almost out of time. They did it all for the Nuki.
The Nuki.
So you could take that cookie. I like that. They did it for the Nuki. Love those red chairs in the background. Those are some cool chairs. Thanks.
Julie doesn't like my anti-NATO stance. I'm not a big believer in how NATO is situated right now. Should we tear it down and make a new NATO that pays attention to things and has some teeth and has, pure buy-in from everybody that's involved instead of sugar daddy United States that pays for everything? All right, let's get out of here. Thanks.
We'll leave it on. Do it all for the Nuki. So you could take that cookie.
Thank you for listening to this show on Youngstown Studio. This is original Youngstown content. Feel free to share our videos and tell your friends about us. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook.